All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. Really appreciate it. Really excited to be here. My name is Berenstein. I'm one of the solution engineers coming from Flexera. I've been with the company for about 5 years now. Before that, spent some time as a VMware engineer for about 7.5 years, and then was bouncing around between some startups before that. I've been doing FinOps since I pretty much graduated out of university in 2013, unknowingly until about 5 years ago, but we still had really similar goals to what we're talking about today and what we are achieving today.
My name is Joe Bitar, and before I kick it off, I have my friend here, Eric Brown, who said he has rotten tomatoes in case my voice doesn't project. So please let me know if you can't hear me, so I'll just speak up a little more, okay? So Joe Bitar, title is Cloud Solution Architect. And as I listened to the presentations this morning, tokenomics and FinOps, and since I'm in the business of optimization, I'm thinking maybe, come up with a new term. I don't call it maybe fit optics, combine the two. I don't know how that goes, but that's what I do. That's what I've been doing for the last 6 years. Been with ExxonMobil for about 29 years, which is an interesting number to a lot of people here that's kind of in this space. But over the 29 years, I've had many positions. Like I said, the last 6 years have been focused on FinOps. I've had the pleasure or experience to see how this evolved over time. And when we stepped into it, or at least I stepped into that role, it was very at the basic stages, and it was a one-man job. And if that by in itself, it's a lesson or kind of a nugget that we just give back. It's not just a one-person function. But we're here to give back some of those learnings that we had. This is my third session at FinOps X. Every session, you listen to a lot of information coming from keynotes, a lot of vendors providing new technologies, focus, obviously, new techniques. AI is the new big word nowadays. But I also get a lot of feedback or nuggets, if you will, from listening to vendors. Okay, how do they employ these solutions overall? And this is our chance just to give back some of that feedback. We're not looking here to give you, snapshots of presentations as, this is how we've done it. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. But just a kind of a casual discussion between myself and Guy for Flexera and our journey along this path. Okay?
Perfect. Thank you, Joe. Mm-hmm. So Joe and I met 3 years ago right here at FinOps X. Now, Joe came up to our much smaller booth back then, and Joe said that he was going to test me. He's going to test all my knowledge in FinOps. He's going to test how much our platform can do. He is going to break everything he can. Joe tried. Luckily, Joe failed. And now we have a really strong relationship between Exxon and Flexera. So real quick, go
for it.
What are you all going to walk away with? So the first thing that we worked with at Exxon and Flexera is that we really need to make FinOps a part of every day. All engineers need to think about FinOps to be successful. And obviously, Exxon, global company. In the however many long years it took to get to where we are today, I think I've probably worked with over a dozen FinOps practitioners in a dozen countries at Exxon, all in different time zones. I wake up really early. And what we're learning is that while a tool helps, it's not just a tool problem, right? It needs to be shifting the behavior. And that's really what we're seeing Exxon be so good at it. And of course, a tool is going to bring in automation. It's going to bring in AI. That is absolutely going to help, but only when we're tying it to business outcomes. Quick agenda. So we'll start with why FinOps is everyone's job. Talk about how this breaks accountability and how Exxon made this decision part of their daily lives. Again, all engineering needs to think about FinOps and how they are doing this globally, how they're scaling it globally. And of course, we got to talk about automation and AI, how that's going to fit in here, and what good looks like and where we are hoping to build a future with Exxon. So I'm going to ask you all a couple of questions as we go through here, just raising hands. At your organizations, who here feels like they know who owns cloud costs? Raise your hand if you know. Okay. Now, keep it up if it's working. A lot less hands, and I appreciate it because you're going to like where we're going from here. So, oh, missed my slide. Joe, you say FinOps is a part of everyday decisions. What made you realize that it needs to be every day? It can't be just something we look at once a month.
Perfect. So before I get to that, I'm going to ask you a question about, I promised that I'll push Flexera in this case into space maybe you haven't been there before. And hopefully I delivered. I continue to deliver this. And maybe that's my reward, if you will, just to kind of get up on stage and have that discussion. So hopefully it's working. And it's a journey, right? It's been good so far, and hopefully we'll continue to be in that space. But before I talk about what Guy just asked me, I think it would be good just to set the stage of how we're structured. Again, just based on some presentations I had or listened to in the past, a lot of good discussions, but it's always like, how does that apply to me? Because every environment is rather different. And in our case, it is different yet, and it's rather complex. So we started as a single source or one cloud provider, and as we do it always in ExxonMobil, we look into the future. We always looked at 15, 20, beyond year type of planning, and this was no different. To some people, like, this is too slow. It works for us, okay? But this is how we started, one provider with the other providers kind of a smaller footprint. As we matured in that space, we evolved into multi-cloud and multi-spend as well. And we also expanded from being a project-driven to multi-organization, multi-country, multi-time zones. Yes, we suffer with the multi-time zone support, multi-disciplines, and multi-customers. So it's a general purpose cloud, if you will, or clouds or footprint. And the challenge is to bring all of that visibility into as much a systematic process as possible. So that was our challenge and continued to be our challenge. Now, going back to your question, Guy, is when did we decide or feel like it's not a monthly thing or you have to do it quickly? So it goes back to about 2020, this is around the onset of COVID. I had just joined the team, and we were doing things a little bit semi-manually, if you will. And it happened to be I was analyzing the Excel file. You download, you go through the mechanics of it, and we observed a runaway process. It was incurring tens of thousands or thousands of dollars per day, but it would have been tens of thousands by the end of the month. Luckily, we caught it early on, and we minimized the effect of it. So that was the big, gun, a smoking gun there. And then as we communicated data to our senior management, one of the selling points, what you get the feedback right away is like, we like this is timely data. We don't have to wait till the end of the month or the quarter or the end of the year to get that. So that was, you could say, the turning point, kind of the driver or the catalyst behind all of that.
And you guys are similar to a lot of organizations. 73% of organizations are still using hybrid cloud. You can read this on the Flexera State of the Cloud report. If you haven't, it's fantastic, right? So it's really important to be able to manage it all together and have everyone accountable, not running in silos. And we'll talk about that silos a lot today. So at cloud scale, accountability starts breaking most of the time. So where did you first see this at Exxon?
So as I mentioned earlier, it's almost everything, cloud, discipline, all of that. So we quickly realized it's not just a one-person job or just a one-team job. So we adopted, if you will, the FinOps framework methodology. You have the team, CCoE, it happens to be our team's name as well. So you have the central team, but then we quickly realized we need to engage our champions out there just to kind of train the trainer, send the message, and be the representative of the end user. Yeah. And that end user could be the geologist, the scientist, the planner, the manager, the support person. So really we needed to create that network in between. And then at the same time, nothing goes without executive push. And that was, you could say, the major, again, push or catalyst that made this happen at a rapid pace.
Absolutely. And Joe mentioned CCoE. For any of you that don't know, our primary FinOps module is called Cloud Cost Optimization, CCoE. A little confusing there when we're talking to each other. So what was the moment where it became clear that this wasn't just a finance problem, right? You're an architect. You're bringing other people, other personas into this conversation.
So I mentioned the anomaly that we observed early on.
Absolutely.
And again, it becomes quite apparent right away, like, okay, so you can't just look at the data and see what happens. You need to analyze and drive some insights out of that. So anomalies, cost spends, spikes, and then you translate into, of course, budgets, forecast, what have you. So all of that, and then you have to drive them, action those insights. So you put them back into the pipe, send it to the support teams. How do you automate? How do you right size? How do you take advantage of those opportunities? So this is an ongoing, and of course, we were rapidly increasing, so we need to keep an eye on that as well. How do we take advantage of savings plans? You know, how do we keep that, all of that in balance? It became quite apparent, and as we increase, we haven't even talked about AI yet, that complexity
we'll come back to that
increases. It keeps increasing, and that's where, you know, we felt like we need to have a little bit more structure and be ahead of it and not reactive to it.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's jump into your day-to-day, the decisions that the engineers are making. So it's easy to say that engineers should own costs. What did you actually change?
Well, so what we've done, we've learned a lot of things along the way.
Yeah.
But one thing we've done, I think right early on, that's before I joined the team, but taking advantage of that, is we created this organizational metadata structure to go along with the Azure, AWS, the other providers that we have, is how do we create this accountability? So you can prevent the cost, show the cost data, but without showing as what's in it for me.
Yeah.
People say, look, I don't know, someone else pays for it. And we have a phrase, we heard this, a comment, says like, doesn't IT absorb this cost? Well, obviously not, right? So you want to create this accountability to the person and give them the ability to act on it, and that's critical, all of that. So visibility by itself, it's fine, but how does it account to the person or to the resource owner? So that's critical. Now, we have here, as we go beyond the cloud providers or hyperscalers, Snowflake, Databricks, CSaaS, which I'm calling it consumption-based SaaS, that also magnifies that, but the same concept should apply as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we talked a lot about behavior. What was the very first thing that you changed to be successful here?
It's create that accountability.
Yeah.
Right? So when we have that discussion with someone and say, look at this, and I'll give credit to our senior management, because again, they drove this. You show me the data, fine, I don't care. What should I do about this one? But when you have, the direction coming from top down and say, this is everyone's business, it's everyone's responsibility to do so, that was, again, a defining moment. So it's not something you fall into, like you have to drive into it, and that was a defining moment for us.
Absolutely, makes sense. Okay, starting to get into the automation piece. I know everyone's waiting for it. So a lot of companies are investing heavily in tools, and they're still struggling. Again, we said at the start, tooling is great. It is not your silver bullet. What did shifting the focal point to behavior unlock for you all? And actually, how long did that take?
Yeah. So automate is an interesting word. And our manager, who's also in the audience for moral support and discussions, is always challenging us.
He's going to get in trouble.
To say, why can't we automate faster? Why not automate? And automate as a concept, it's fantastic. But just because we can, the answer is, should we? And where does it apply? In some cases, it's almost an easy answer, okay? Yeah. You have, say, such a bastion instance. If you're familiar with that, that's the connection you create between your machine to Azure as a secure connection. And the way it works, it persists and incurs costs. So now, like, okay, if it goes for a few days, kill it, right? That's an easy one. You automate that process. You have some storage that's been disconnected or some snapshots that should not be existing after a certain period of time. Easy decision, right? Yeah. Now, automation starts to increase in complexity. You want to shut down a machine. Can we do it? Sure. Should we do it? Okay. Should we enable the user, right? So this is where you start enabling the user to make those decisions on their own and just kind of enable or subscribe to it. Mm-hmm. When you go a little bit beyond that, which is right sizing, change machine type, That now you start dealing with people's resources, and that's the challenge we're trying to balance. What's the right approach? We're still working that out. Okay, but it's an ongoing journey overall.
You're honest.
Yes.
Yeah, so let's continue talking about automation, start talking about AI, how we're using it responsibly within Exxon, and how Flexera is going to help you all, of course, as we move forward. Automation, obviously a really big theme right now. Where has it actually driven value for you, and where did you all as Exxon decide to hold back?
So the examples I just mentioned
Yeah.
are it, right? But I'll add one more, if you want to call it automation, or maybe act on behalf of the community. Savings plans, for example. Okay, so savings plans, as most of you are aware of, it's a great way to capture more savings, but it's for the right decision. You have to kind of plan ahead because you're making either 1 or 3 year commitment to take advantage of those savings.
Yeah.
But this is, you don't just on your own, you have those discussions and project forward. This is a process we can automate where we take responsibility. Our team takes responsibility of that based on those decisions versus say, Guy, go to your subscription, go to your account, you make the decision. That actually can have a negative effect.
Yeah.
It's timely, and it could have a negative effect because they may not have visibility overall, and that would be wasteful resources overall.
Absolutely. Can you think of one piece of automation that you all said absolutely not?
Yeah, plenty. I'm looking at Emily, our manager, that's the discussion I was mentioning where can we be more proactive and shut machines down, at this right size?
Yeah.
And the answer is like, yes, but it's the pace of how we get there and the process of how we get there. So is it hard? No, right? Okay, so we want to automate, right? But we want to be deliberate, okay? So we want to be careful how we approach that.
You're flexible.
Yeah.
Okay. So what does intentional automation look like in practice? Right? How do you avoid creating more noise or a risk?
Communication. So you can't just automate in darkness, right? So as long as you keep those champions I was talking about and the whole community aware of what's going on and show them the value and what comes out of that and how they can react to it, that's critical. But also show them the tools or the mechanism how they can monitor that. So it's a two-way thing. It's like, as I said before, it's not just a one team doing all the activities, but we enable the community. So even when it comes to automation, yes, you want to enable automation, but also give them the tool set or the knowledge to be part of that process.
Perfect. Okay. So at Flexera, we played a little game in January when we had some of us from go-to-market and some of us from product get together. And we played the game of how many different AI tools in general did we subscribe to, SaaS-based. Now, I also asked this question to Joe and some other audience member at a roadshow in Houston a couple weeks ago. Joe gave me a hard time. Raise your hand if you think that you and your organization subscribe to somewhere between 1 and 15 different AI tools. Okay. Raise your hands if you think somewhere between 15 and 30. Raise your hand if you think it's over 45. The answer is for Flexera, and probably a lot of you, because I guessed in the 15 to 30 as well, 56. Visibility is really difficult. That is the hardest piece about AI right now, right? So I'm happy that some people guessed low. I would be interested to find out what the true number is. There was, of course, a little bit of overlap with different versions of Copilot and such, but it was a much bigger number than I expected. Do you remember what yours was, Joe? What your guess was?
I gave you a number, but the more I thought about it and attending the morning sessions and the keynotes and all of that, and again, the interesting discussions we've had internally, I'm going to change it to a very small number, okay? And let me qualify that. So I mentioned that at ExxonMobil, we tend to look into the future quite a bit. That's our job. We're the energy business, so we're trying to enable the business that way. When it comes to AI, there's a lot of companies out there we're security conscious, right?
Absolutely.
And we created the guardrails, at least into the AI world, in a deliberate way, okay? So if you say how many AI tools do you use, the reason I gave Guy a hard time about the AI tools, like define AI, Okay, like define a tool in this case. Okay, is it embedded into the SaaS? And of course, we had good discussions like buckets and categories. But in our case, at least the way I'm looking at it, at least our team is looking at it, we have another team dedicated to AI. Okay, they control that entry point, and even our friendly co-pilot is not as capable, if you will. That's intentionally that way, okay? Just because we wanted to control that, both from security as well as the way we deploy things. So go back to your question. You asked me how many do we have. From our FinOps point of view, technically we have one.
Okay.
That way, right? Because so our
As I
goal,
mentioned, he gives me a hard time.
so our goal is to enable the visibility and show what that means to the end user, whatever that end user is, whether it's the AI team, the end user, the manager, the business unit, what have you. Our goal is to bring that information forward.
By the way, we are going to find out his real number here in a couple of weeks. We are testing this new capability within Exxon, so we'll report back on how wrong he is. Okay. So when you started scaling this globally, how did you think about standardizing automation within Exxon while still allowing for all those local flexibility? And where are you now starting to see AI play a role, both in managing AI and spend, and using AI to drive FinOps?
Correct. So this is a discussion about AI for FinOps, FinOps for AI. Do you
AI
use,
value.
Correct. AI value is the new term nowadays. So do we look at AI to extract the data, to prep the data to be fed into staging, into the Flexera platform? That's one way of looking at it. Do you look into AI to analyze the data as you collect it and do this data lake analysis and draw the insights and push it to the visibility, actionability? So there's that. But there's also the AI of the day-to-day, chatbot, agentic, gateways, all of that you enable the developer to work on. And of course, we have our own developers who that's their focus, where they use AI or develop AI tools to address some technological advantages in the oil and gas business and energy business. So it's a nebulous AI. Now, where are we right now? We're trying to absorb all of that.
Yeah.
Not the last part, because like I said, we don't own AI that way. It's like, how do we get this data more effectively? Focus helps, of course. How do you build on that focus and then draw those insights to make them actionable quicker, drive that business value quicker using AI? So that's where we stand right now. Now, will that change? I'm afraid it will, especially with tokenomics and everything's being token-driven. So that's going to pull us into a position where, I don't say we're not ready, it's like no one is ready. It seems like we're being pulled into that quicker than we wanted, and that's a space we have to be ready for. Absolutely,
yeah, and I think that we are also going to see the change of AI value really quick here as well. Obviously, within Flexera, if you were all at the keynote, we announced a new AI assistant that I'm really excited about. Please do come to the booth and learn more about it. But the other thing that I am surprised about is just how quick it's all grown, right? This last 18 months has been completely crazy, right? We can see 58% now of all organizations are using Gen AI, 10% more than last year. I have to imagine it's to be a lot more than 10% this next year. So it's pretty wild. So I got another poll question for you all. So raise your hand if AI spend and consumption has a clear owner in your organization right now. Yeah, very, very few hands. And it's funny because at that same roadshow, I also asked people to list who owns AI spend. Most common answer, this dude. Not very helpful. But what we are seeing is that most FinOps practitioners are now responsible for AI spend. Okay. So building on the progress so far, how does the journey continue at Exxon? As AI becomes central to optimizing operations and simplifying complexity, where do you see it unlocking the next wave of FinOps value? So, like I said, we're in the business of enabling better, quicker decisions, value-driven, okay? Yeah.
So when it comes to AI, this is a space that, again, it's busting at the seams, right?
Yeah.
And to answer your question...
As we learned
Yes, like who owns AI, who owns AI spend? This is the challenge that we have, is to take that and pass it to the right entity, whatever that is.
Yeah.
Is it a project? Is it an organization as a whole? Is it Guy or Joe in the respective teams? That's the challenge, because depending on how they're going to use it, the cost is going to change. So
Yeah.
it's an interesting question, and that's why it's hard to answer. Like, who owns it? Technically, everyone. But how do you pass it on to that accountability thing that I mentioned earlier? So it all comes down to identify that resource and pass it on to the right person. Now, how do we enable this? So AI is here to stay.
Yeah.
Okay. Everyone's interested, want to use it for all the right reasons, but as we're hearing here at the keynotes and discussions and in the industry, the spend is getting out of hand.
Yeah.
So we don't want to stifle that by any means. We just want to make sure we put the right guardrails around it, so it doesn't overrun us, but at least, again, use that word again, deliberate and purposeful in how we use it. So that way people can use the right decisions, or use the right decision, not kind of, again, oops, I just blew my budget, right?
Yeah, and we've all been talking also about, the one thing, or not one of many things that AI has brought us is more work. Yes, some of our work is a lot faster. It's also brought me a whole lot more work. So very interesting there. And I guess another question for you, if you did have a do-over in this AI space, what would you do differently? What didn't work, I guess?
So far it's been working well for us. If it's not what I would do differently, I'm going to point to our friends, providers of the data.
Yeah.
Anthropic, Microsoft, AWS, Oracle, those guys, if they would make that data available to us early on. So actually, I wouldn't say differently in the sense of I could have done anything about it, but I'm excited to see the focus, for example, bringing that in to help us analyze this data and help us push again, our friends that provide this data, so we can get in front of it instead of trying to react to it. So that's the only thing different, if you want to say it that way, but that's the name of that space we live in. It's rapidly moving, and we have to react to it instead of plan for it.
Absolutely. And so bringing this all together, right? So a big part of this is that we don't want to act in silos anymore, right? And we're seeing this at Exxon, we're seeing this at many other customers. I see many of you out there that I have spoken to in the past as well. And that's really where Flexera comes in. We really want to break those silos. And Joe, from your perspective, how important is it that it evolves beyond just cloud cost, right? In that broader platform conversation?
It's quite important, actually. It's by design for us. I put that buzzword, CSaaS, consumption SaaS. But really what we're learning here, so when we set our path to do FinOps in a structured way, we said, okay, we start, of course, with the obvious, the cloud providers, because that's where things start. But really take those lessons, that knowledge, and pass it on to what would be the next thing.
Yeah.
Of course, Snowflake and Databricks are the obvious ones nowadays. They play in that space. But this could also apply, or should apply, in all of these SaaS, PaaS type of activities, because the world is going that way.
Yeah.
Whether we're being pulled by AI or conceptually. I mean, so that you empower the person, whatever that person is in their role. Now it's license-based. I get it. Or it's you go by a seat, or off you go. But if you enable that person, you give them the power of the data that they're using,
Sure.
which is the same thing as FinOps. And again, AI takes it to the next level with their own token concept.
Yeah.
But this definitely beyond just the cloud. This is intended to be as an ecosystem.
Absolutely, yeah, it's bringing it all together. We don't want to have visibility for just one part. We don't want to focus on just AI, just licenses, just data centers, just data clouds, right? Obviously Snowflake, Databricks, those are all exploding as well. And we want to have that one platform that we can trust, that one platform that helps us just all speak the same language. That's really kind of where Flexera comes in. And Joe, another question for you, especially now that you're becoming the Flexera expert, which I'm really excited about. And Joe's getting to test a lot of our new capabilities, which Lucky you. So Joe, as you think about where Exxon is today, how important is it to have that path? Where can you expand into scopes without without breaking how teams are operating?
So you mentioned before, tooling is not everything, right?
Absolutely.
And
No, it's a pretty good tool.
Yeah, so we still subscribe to that. And I attended a session earlier, I won't mention the name, but where they went through the journey of in-house tool to a hybrid solution, and then they decided to go back to an in-house complete tool, which works for them fantastic.
Yeah.
But I always ask the question again, how does that apply to us? Is that something we can do? And again, I look at my friends and say, okay, that's when we decided to go from in-house tool to do the POC, and you know, we partnered with Flexera on that one. That question is still there, okay? Mm-hmm. It's not the tool, it's the mindset. So we're trying to push the FinOps mindset first and foremost. The tool helps, okay? And as we go into AI and tokenomics and all that, yes, the tool actually becomes critical.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, is it the only thing? It's just still a tool. Without the mindset, without the structure, without the champions, without the executive buy-ins, without the process improvement, so you need to build on that one. But yeah, it's the heartbeat that brings all that together.
Absolutely. And so this is where we really want to start bringing it all together. Now, again, Joe and team has started with our cloud cost optimization module, really looking at cloud costs, bringing it together, doing the entire FinOps lifecycle. But now we want to go ahead and extend that. The team has done a really good job at building the language that we can all speak, right? That's FinOps, building the culture, bringing in now the scopes piece, SaaS, licensing, AI, sustainability as well, right? That is definitely a big part of this conversation as well, especially in this whole AI world, right? Can we make decisions of switching maybe even from different Gen AI tools, use other ones that might use less power, less water for cooling, right? We're not saying use less AI, maybe just using it a little smarter. But bring it all together in a single platform, having visibility, being able to share it across everyone, and then have clear goals and KPIs that we can all measure against. And when we do that, we find significant savings that we can then go ahead and bring back to the business, put it towards the goals of the different business outcomes that we have. Really powerful in a single platform like that to see it all. It's really exciting for me because what many customers I'm speaking to outside of AI, what their goal is total cost of ownership. They want to be able to actually see what is this IT world costing me. And obviously there's a lot of change and craziness today. So again, having it in a single place has been really powerful for many customers, and love what I'm seeing here with Exxon as well. And so Joe, when you look at progression, starting with cloud and expanding out, how are you thinking about what comes next, and where will the biggest impact come from?
So I was excited to hear some of the announcements that came out today and before, just to see how it brings all that together.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of data that we're pulling into this single pane of glass, the one that you just painted. But there's a lot more questions that keep coming at us. So I'm really looking forward to how this ties together. And my promise hasn't changed to Flexera. I'm continuing to push and bring it to that levels. So I'll be the thorn in your side, but really it's like to make this more usable, more accessible, and more personal, if that makes sense. Because we are after accountability to let the person drive that decision at the end of the day. So if we have to feed that information with everything, like, it kind of, you lose that value, you lose that speed in that decision making. So it needs to be actionable and closer to the person who owns it.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we're really saying is that FinOps doesn't just expand, right? It makes everything just so much easier to understand, right? Bringing it all together in a consistent way. Again, we love talking about having the culture and having the language that we can just put together. Makes it a lot easier. So Joe, final question for you. As you look ahead, how do you decide where to expand FinOps next, and what needs to come first? AI cannot be your answer.
No. So during our last meeting, we decided to put, let's call that mandate. So, which is, FinOps should not be an afterthought. this is how we got here for all the right reasons, but it needs to be at the beginning of whatever project initiative that you're driving against. Because what we're facing right now is it's okay, something gets pushed out, and it's okay, can you show me the cost? Like, help me, right?
Yeah.
Help me see this visibility. So if we put the FinOps mentality, and again, tokenomics is going to be part of that as well, at the early stages, it makes the whole process a lot easier. You identify what you're looking for, what you're missing, maybe you want to introduce it into that process, that software, that whatever flow that you have, and it makes the whole thing a lot easier and a lot more effective. So really, just push that process. Let's say there's the shift left. How about just shift the whole FinOps left into everyday's process? That would be critical.
Yeah. And I'm excited that you brought up tokenomics, even though I said AI doesn't count, right? And you all got a quick glimpse of it. And again, please feel free to come ask us more questions. But having the visibility also across all these scopes into the different tokens, no matter if it's used for on-prem tools, for cloud, for SaaS, that's exciting to me, right? It makes everything so much easier. Any final thoughts?
No thoughts. We still have a few minutes left. So this is intended to be, and hopefully this was helpful to you guys, just to hear no slides, maybe just out of my shirt, take pictures of guess what's written on it. But just to give you some starting points, and I'll be more than happy to answer some of those questions you may have. Like I said, I was part of this process since A to whatever letter we're in right now, as to what did we do, what did we learn, or some things that maybe could have been done differently that if we had, like Guy was asking. So by all means, we're here just to give that feedback as you ask.
All right, Q&A. And as a reminder, holding the magic box doesn't make your voice loud. Talking to the box makes your voice loud. There you go.
Can you talk about some of the challenges or what mistakes you made in your process that you learned from?
That's a good one. So I wouldn't say mistake, but we could do better, and that is tagging. So tagging that identifies that accountability. So we have a tagging process in place, but as we progress and we go into this second phase of visibility and accountability, all that good stuff, we realize that if we do the tagging more consistently and enforce it even more than we have in the past, that helps a lot. Whether it's identifying resources to be optimized, bring the visibility to the right person, right resource, so that tagging, basically enriching the data, more or less. So as the data comes across from the hyperscalers, it's fantastic, but it still lacks that what's in it for me, and that piece needs to be injected somehow, and if it's done properly and at the early stages, that could help a lot.
Did you find yourself having to go back and redo any of your tagging efforts? And if so, what were some strategies to help you?
Unfortunately, yes, we're in the process of doing that right now. So the strategy for that one, and tagging is one of those things where, because we're in the middle of it, it's a love-hate relationship. It's easy, it takes two clicks and you're tagged, but it's that governance. So if you don't have governance around it, and the compliance, the enforcement, the socialization of that, just because you build the most fantastic dictionary, tagging dictionary, if you don't socialize it and make it part of people's processes, it's pretty, it's nice, but it needs to be introduced. So really, it needs to be deliberate. Again, it's that word again. It needs to be just done with the end goal in mind and that governance around it.
Yeah, and I talk to a lot of customers, maybe hundreds, it's a lot. And that seems to be such a consistent thing, right? Tagging seems both simple and obvious, yet it's actually really hard to get right. And you're probably gonna get it wrong many times before you get it wrong again.
More questions? Oh, here we go. I'll come back to you.
So you guys talk about the anomaly. So cost data lags around 48 hours for all cloud provider. So if we use the cost data for anomaly, we are seeing the delay in the alerts, and so how you are managing that?
So anomaly is an interesting one. So if you go by hourly, it sounds good, but is it really an anomaly? if it's an hour, right? So you have to give it some time and make sure it is an anomaly. Now, of course, if you get a spike, it's an anomaly right away. But so we look at our data at least for daily, okay?
Yeah.
And look for that pattern and decide what is an anomaly. So with Flexera, it has an engine that does the anomaly. In the past, this is what we're trying to focus on this, change that logic as to the anomaly should be controlled by the person looking at it. If you have a spike or a gradual increase, is that intentional or unintentional, right? And the only way you would know is you give the dials to the person who's looking at it, okay? Is it percentage? Is it a cost? What's that threshold that you put in place? And then that would drive the decision whether it's an anomaly or not. And of course, you take the action afterwards, right? But it's that detection of the anomaly that kind of drives this whole thing, right? Now, Flexera, again, has all these hooks in place. It's just a matter of tweaking it the way you want, and that's the challenge, to make the anomaly personal again. Like, instead of just you pass it on to the whole platform, like, well, that's not an anomaly. That becomes the crying wolf type thing, like that. So just start clicking and deleting that versus taking action on it.
So the question for Flexera is it built on the cost data or is it built on the telemetry data?
It's kind of a mix of the two, but I think that AI is one of the things for anomalies that I'm so excited about, right? Because it is so much more proactive, right?
Yeah.
It takes so much less human intervention. I would love to talk to you more about this, so please,
sure.
please do come on by.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Right. One more question.
Oh, yay. You're ending with me? That's unfortunate. All right. So my question is really on the implementation and execution to, when you guys first started this journey. What were the guidelines that you guys went by when defining the guardrails between your environments? So dev, you expect a lot of accidents and mistakes and higher costs in dev, but how do you make a judgment call on what's an acceptable layer at dev versus prod or pre-prod?
It's an interesting question, and you hit it right on the head. I mentioned tagging, right? So you need to identify as to what is it you're looking at. And after you decide that, then the hard question comes in. As I started with my kind of giving you the lay of the land, I didn't go into another layer of how complex we have it, all for the right reasons. So now you have to make decisions based on who can we push a little bit faster, harder into that automation versus taking a broad brush and doing that. So you're probably not going to like my answer, but it depends. So it needs to be targeted, right? But it starts with that identifying what group you're looking at, and then have that dialogue and say, okay, are you guys ready? Okay, can you sign on the dotted line? And if the answer is yes, and hopefully it will be yes, then you empower them to do so. And, the tool set is there. We just need to do it, very carefully. So it truly depends. Of course, you leave the production till the end because of how it should be, right? So it really depends.
And I like how Exxon uses our platform for that, because they really separate it and really treat it as completely separate environments, which obviously then gives you the opportunity to go after what's going to save you the most money. Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Nice job.
Hey everyone, producer Andrew here. Thanks for watching. Check out the rest of our channel for more FinOps content. Like, subscribe, and leave questions and comments for our speakers. We appreciate your support.